Dan had a crazy girlfriend. He always had a crazy girlfriend. In those days, I didn't have any girlfriends of any sort, so I was above criticism on this point. Now I've discovered that it's better to have loved and lost than never to have lost at all. Dan's girlfriend just then was really crazy. He picked a proper one this time. One of my favourite things is criticising other people's girlfriends, especially when I'm in love. When I'm not, one of my favourite things is criticising my ex-girlfriends. Her name was Helena, which is a nice name, but that's where my affection ended, with the A. I only met her 5-6 times, but she was crazy, all right. She really was, I could tell. Dan met her in Israel the summer before college. She lived on the south coast and came up to London to see him sometimes. Now, London isn't Israel and college is no kibbutz. It rains and you can stay in bed and forget about picking fruit for a start. And that's what they do. Apart from the fruit, obviously, and whether it was raining or not. I used to hang out with them, but all in all, it was more interesting outside, what with the rain and all. Helena wasn't exactly conversation on a stick, more like catatonia in a can. Her social technique precluded communication, as she tended to hide her face behind her hair, the bedclothes, a teddy bear, or Daniel's hair. Wherever she was in the room, it reached. Faced with a pair of blue eyes peeping out from one of the aforementioned and her own reluctance to speak, I didn't feel much like saying anything myself, apart from, "You're mad." Which she was, and everybody knew it. Childhood trauma, family failure, too much in this world, the usual story. The ones that fall are sometimes forgiven for being too weak, but the ones that stand are never given credit for being so strong. Apparently her father was a brilliant man until he totaled the Porsche on the way to work one day and refused to leave the kitchen ever since. He won't be down on Wall Street in the morning. Dan told me this and he got it from her, so fuck knows what really happened. They aren't exactly Reuters when it comes to reality, either of them. Dan leaned over and turned the tape over. "She's mad, Dan." "Oh. What happened with the blood?" "She's chasing around the flat with a pair of scissors. Something about a haircut, I suppose. She got me here. He showed me a scabby line on his forearm. I had to lock myself in here." "Uh-huh." "She was screaming and kicking the door. She started cutting herself and I had to take the scissors off her. She got me here." He showed me the same scabby line on the same forearm. "Why? What's the problem all of a sudden?" "She's depressed. Like she wasn't once. You know." "Yeah, I know." I looked out of the window where stuff happened. "She's mad, Dan." He looked at the ceiling and delivered himself of a platitude. "She says, in the country of the blind, the one-eyed man is king." He thought she was genuinely talented, oversensitive, and ought to be protected from herself to set her spirit free. Blah, blah, blah. In the country of the blind, she's giving sign language seminars about silent movies to Helen Keller. I couldn't touch him. Slaughtering him in a debate was like landing a dead fish. He rolled another joint. A major part of his life was spent rolling joints. The rest of it he spent smoking them. There were weeks at a time when he wasn't straight. He'd roll one before getting out of bed in the afternoon, and it was all downhill from there. The next thing you'd know, it'd be 24 hours later, and he'd have to start all over again. He couldn't remember great swathes of time, but he wasn't curious about it. He had a kind of calm certainty that he'd had a good time, even though he heard about it secondhand and days later. Myself, I learned to lose my memory by drinking beer and then wine. Worked every time, total blackout and a mouth like Gandhi's flip-flop the next day. I'd always get a visit from the Bromley gibbon, an animal that breaks into your house at night, steals all your money and shits in your mouth. But I was curious about what had happened while I was out. Spent a lot of time piecing together my movements. I felt like Mickey Rourke in Angel Heart. Looked like him too, kind of that dyed-in look. What should we do then? We'd only lose. We'd lose a losers competition, or win, whatever's worse, disqualification. What should we do? You're the one that's bored. Sometimes I'm not bored. I'm reading this book about rope. Sex and death, same old stuff. I was strangers to both. And they killed somebody just to see if they could do it. And what do you know? They could. Yes! He ducked my sarcasm with the agility of a dwarf in a foxhole. These two students thought they were better than everyone else, and they read Nietzsche. And they wound up as music critics on the NME. They killed someone just to see if they could do it. This is where James Stewart gets them, based on that thing in college in Boston or something, isn't it? Leopold and Loeb, they died in jail, Dan. That's hardly a success, is it? They killed somebody to see if they could do it, but forgot about getting away with it. There are things called consequences. Look what happened to Nietzsche talking to horses in the street and getting blamed for the Nazis. It was just an idea. Only just. Once you put an idea into practice, then you have to be prepared for other stuff to interfere. The hidden irony of two inaction men discussing consequences and putting things into practice didn't occur to us. This was our version of doing something. Killing somebody is a fine idea, but who do you hate enough to spend 20 years in prison for killing them? And if you don't hate anyone enough, you have to like killing, and you don't even wear leather shoes. Dan was a disciple of veganism, a kind of national socialist vegetarianism, which seemed to exist solely to make it difficult for people with a conscience to enjoy a good meal. He'd read a guide to a vegan diet, the Pesto Manifesto or something, and now Dan didn't eat nearly everything. It's easier to list what he did eat, and he couldn't wear anything made from animals, like leather belts or shoes, or a Mickey Mouse watch, I suppose. Shopping with Daniel was mainly taken up with reading the labels on things and wondering what bouillabaisse meant. A meal he cooked was only worthwhile because it made your own cooking look good and reminded you how much he liked, food. He never pigged out because he couldn't eat pork. He ate beetroot and pita bread and shat red sandwiches. He ate couscous and hundreds of things made out of soya that all tasted exactly the same, of soya, including soya milk, which is like the last bit of milk at the bottom of the bowl when you leave some unfinished cornflakes to soak in the sink for a couple of days. He even drank it neat, like real milk, except that it tasted like pureed cardboard box that a dog puked up. Twice. He went to all this trouble to stay stick pin thin and pale as a nightscape negative. I used to threaten to rub bacon fat into his hair when he was asleep, but he would laugh whenever I teased him about his diet, with the calm assurance of the late converted that he was right and I had taken the devil's communion by way of a Big Mac. He would live forever and I wouldn't. It didn't matter that I was thin and pale too. That was too much for him to factor in. God, he was different. When he took up the saxophone once, he had to order a special one because normal carnivorous saxophones apparently have a piece of kangaroo leather to keep the mouthpiece in peace. That's right, kangaroo leather. Who knew that? So, of course, he couldn't put that in his mouth, could he? He ordered a fucking vegan sax from some nutcase in Holland who had cornered the market in PC brass and charged people 3 times the meat price for a tofu mouthpiece or something. I called it the green horn, as Daniel was only a beginner. He didn't get it. I could have cared. Superman shit. I looked at the ceiling. I wonder why a spider plant couldn't stick to it. Then I didn't. What does similitude mean? He stopped doing what he was doing, which wasn't anything, and started not doing nothing, which was something. I don't know. I only read The Hobbit.